the energy and the positivity towards like the NWA and towards the show and stuff was just unbelievable.
Billy's and Dave's vision to me so far has been very, very, very good.
As much as it's a throwback, it's really just, it's a format that works. And honestly, it's the same format as every other wrestling show. It's just the environment is so different.
They have been giving opportunities to people like me that haven't had an opportunity the way that we are here.
It's a little bit of old with the new. It's the most historic, longest running organization around. Man, I feel like we're setting things on fire at this point.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Prime Time with Shawn Mooney. I want to welcome all of our new listeners that are joining us after watching yet another compelling episode of NWA Power. Things are definitely heating up in the world of the National Wrestling Alliance, and this week we will welcome a man from the roster who is fast becoming one of the most popular wrestlers in the NWA, Trevor Murdoch, right here on Prime Time. Man, I have to tell you, I am just so excited about all the things that are going on surrounding PTSM, and I hope you are too, because we've got a lot of great stuff coming your way. Before we get to Trevor, I want to thank everybody who submitted questions last week for our latest edition of AMA. You know what that is, Ask Mooney Anything. But we had some great questions, and it was great to hear from so many people interested in finding out how the connection to the NWA came about and all that has happened since. Besides Trevor Murdoch, we plan on bringing a lot of other stars of the NWA to PTSM. We put out a poll this past week, and it looks like many of you out there, many of our listeners, would like to see us do another podcast totally devoted to the NWA and its personalities. I tell you, I would love to hear more from you, more of your thoughts on us doing just that, and you can do that by emailing me at primetimemooney@gmail.com, okay? primetimemooney@gmail.com. I check that email account every single day, and so I will read your email and get back to you, but I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you like us having a guest here on Prime Time with Shawn Mooney, or would you like us to have an entirely different podcast devoted to the NWA and all its happenings and all its great personalities? So once again, email me at primetimemooney@gmail.com. But right now, it's time to hear from one of the greatest wrestlers ever, Trevor Murdoch. Ding, ding, ding. My guest this episode is an individual who many remember from his time with the WWE, but he also spent time in TNA or Impact Wrestling. He is a throwback wrestler, a brawler, and as they say, one tough sumbitch. Trevor Murdoch, welcome to Primetime. How are you?
Right on, Shawn. Thank you for having me, bud.
Yeah, love chatting with you. And, we'll get into your career and how you travel this path. But, of course, everybody now knows that you're with the new NWA and it's a power program. Are you surprised by the reception that you've received there? It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm extremely surprised. When you're running a character with Trevor Murdoch, I've been a heel most of my career, so people are yelling and screaming at me, and they like to call me names, and I'm okay with that, with the gimmick. So after a while, with me stepping out of the scene for a while and kind of just doing my own thing, to come back to such fanfare, it really is heartwarming for me. It makes me feel like my work hasn't gone unnoticed.
Man, I'll tell you, and a lot of people remember your days in the WWE, and you spent a number of years there to great success. And, I'm sure I can put this delicately, but I'm sure you when I say it, but I mean, you're not exactly a chiseled figure. But
right, no, I got a mirror, Shawn. I know what I look like, big guy.
But I tell you, man, you can flat out work. I mean, I'm telling you, when I saw you back, and I was like, wow. I mean, he hasn't been around for a while, and I think that they are some of the best matches they have had on there with you coming in, and there was no real fanfare to it. It's not like they build you up and oh my God, you're not going to believe this guy. But really, I have to tell you, I have enjoyed those matches so much, and you haven't lost a step in the ring. I mean, did you keep working, or how did you get that? Yeah.
I'd still do matches here and there, but also with Harley's school, I got to go up there and work out with a lot of his trainees and try to help develop those guys as well. But it's, Shawn, you've been around the wrestling world for a long time. You know how it is. If it's the wheel. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I go out there and I do what I was trained to 20 plus years ago, and that's just go out there and tell a story and work your ass off. The great thing about the NWA is it's a very dressed down situation. There's no lights, no smoke, no music.
Yeah.
There's you and another individual, and you got to go out there and perform in front of a live audience. And if you got it, you've got it. And if you don't, those people will let you know you don't. So I feel really excited, really happy that the fans are still with me, and they still let me know, hey, listen, for a fat guy, you can still do it.
Well, and the thing about it is, with today's product and what's out there, it's high flying. It's these unbelievable moves where guys are jumping off balconies onto chairs and flipping over the top rope and do a crowd of guys you're depending on catching you. And it's no knock. I mean, if that's what people want to go and see, but I'm old school where I want to see a story told, and and good wrestling. And it seems as though they're trying to stay true to that, and people are responding to it, which I really think is great.
Well, it tells you right there that people still love competition between two athletes that go in there. I don't knock anybody for if they want to do flips and dives, and that's how they entertain the folks. There's enough room for everybody. But for me, I like to see two guys go in there and knock the piss out of each other and not know who's going to win. There's a lot of times you can watch, and I may get heat for this, but you can watch the WWE product, you can watch the Impact product, and at times you can watch the AEW product, and you know who's going to win or lose. You can't say the same thing about the NWA product because they've been able to keep everybody to a certain level that you don't know who's going to win or lose. So you're with them for the whole ride till the end, and the fan is just as surprised as everybody else on who wins or loses.
Yeah.
That's what wrestling's about. You're supposed to be entertained all the way to the finish.
Yeah, tell a story. Take me for a ride. I want to be entertained. Take me for a ride. But it's really awesome.
And it also gives the fans something to get behind when they see a guy going out there knocking the piss out of somebody, and that guy keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want to see out of somebody. Yeah, I can do an amazing flip, or I can do an amazing hurricanrana or whatever, but can you go in there and take the shots from this heavyweight, this guy that's laying the wood to you, and come back and still put on a good match?
Yeah.
That's what I like to see.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that it's not like you haven't been in the ring, but what was it about the NWA that enticed you to get back on that big stage where, these audiences and the way people are reacting to it? What was it about Billy and Dave Lagana that made you think, I think I would enjoy it?
There's a couple of reasons. First and foremost, Dave and Billy, when they came to me, when they talked to me, I could feel like they still believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they still felt like there was definitely some mileage left in me, and that definitely encouraged me. But in the same sense, coming from my background and my past, Harley, my trainer, my mentor, my guy, 8-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion for the NWA. My whole career, I've been secretly wanting this. I've been wanting to follow in his steps. I've been wanting to walk his path. And now I've got the opportunity. So when the NWA contacted me, when Harley passed away, it just truly felt like there was a call and there was a moment being put on me, a spotlight put on me saying, Trevor, this is what you're supposed to do next. This is where you're going. And I haven't had that direction in a long time, nor have I been excited about wrestling for a company like the NWA the way I am for a long time. It's I come from a different background and a different upbringing when it comes to the business, and it just truly felt for like a long time, Shawn, that I was a round peg, no pun intended, in a square world. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the NWA said, no, man, we've got a spot for you. and we just want you to go do you. We don't, they didn't come in there and say, Trevor, we want you to do this, 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 and then we don't want you to dislike this. Don't say these words. There was no parameters of what not to do. Dave Lagana and Billy, they said, go do you, and let's see what happens. And man, it's turned out really well.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that a round peg in a square hole. What was it that What do you mean by that exactly? As far as them not letting you develop your character the way you thought it should be developed, or what was it?
Well, when you work for larger companies and they micromanage everybody in that larger company, you have people that are telling you how to do your job that, one, have never laced up a pair of boots. Most of them never even been in a fist fight, let alone you're going to go out there and tell me how to do my job and what looks good and what doesn't look good and what, I'm not trying to bury anybody, but they were more worried about protecting everybody else than what I was as an individual, as a character, as a person, what I wanted to come across to the people. You haven't seen in a long time, you haven't seen a guy that goes out there and, he may not look like $1 million, but you don't want to mess with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
those individuals are very real.
Yeah.
They are everywhere. I can walk you through my town and point out 5 different individuals that you'd have to pay me to fight, because I knew at the end of the day I was going to lose something. And those people are very real in this world.
Yeah.
And why aren't they in a situation where they're focused on and people know who they are, and let them do what they can do. And I know what to do in that ring. I know how to get reactions. I know how to get the people to ride that emotional roller coaster that they pay money for. And it just seemed like when I was with those larger companies, they weren't looking at that picture. Does that make any sense at all?
No, absolutely. Because when I worked there with the WWF, which it was at the time, they didn't do that, and I think that's why it was so successful. Which kind of amazes me that somehow they lost that in that journey to becoming this massive, corporate, entity. How they've scripted everything, and now it's micromanaged because they're just so afraid one thing's going to go off track and it's going to screw up and instead of just let it happen, let these guys, you can guide them, you can have storylines that you have that fold into other, superstars' storylines as well. But when it comes right down to it, they have to be able to live that character, because if they don't believe it, how the hell are you going to make somebody who's out in an arena believe it? So, I know exactly what you're talking about.
100%. Yeah. Well, and if you notice with NXT, they're pulling the reins off those guys a little bit and letting them just be themselves. They're not, some of those guys may make some off comments on social media. They're not initially burying those guys. They're not getting in trouble anymore. Whereas before, you couldn't make a comment on social media, whether it was good or bad, and somebody inevitably wouldn't like it, and you'd get heat for it. And it makes no sense. After a while, that talent becomes so concerned that they're going to make the wrong step that they're not able to make the right one.
Yeah.
And now they're letting NXT let them guys do them, and man, they're getting over. It's working. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it's funny you say that you spent most of your career as a heel, but I always thought that I think that there's a lot more people behind that character than you would ever believe, because like you said, they're these guys that they don't look menacing, they don't have the physical appearance, but you mess with them or mess with somebody they love, you're going to pay a deep price for it. And I think there's a lot more that, it's whether you want it to be that way, but it's you're a baby face, and I think it was that true then, and especially since the lines have been blurred, we've seen it happen. But I think it's an awesome character, always has been, because that's the guy that you want to be friends with. You're in a bar somewhere and somebody messes with you, and he's the guy that steps in and takes care of business for you, and it's I mean, I've always loved the character. I just thought it was a great, and you knew who you were. You know, there was no question. So,
well, and a lot of times I had to fight for that
yeah.
because everybody wanted to change me because they didn't understand me. A lot of people think rednecks or country folks, they automatically imagine deliverance. And
yeah, right. Hillbilly, yeah.
That, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
there's some crazy folks out there, and I'm not saying that there isn't, but I am saying that 99% of rednecks or country folks aren't what you might think they are. They're just blue-collar folks that are working their asses off. That there is no gray area. There's a right and there's a wrong.
That's right.
And once you step in the wrong, you need to be you need to be informed. Don't go that direction.
Yeah.
And if life was like that, if everybody was like that, I truly believe that this world would be an easier place to live in.
Yeah. Forget the PC. That's all we.
Yes, sir.
That's what we're living in these days. Okay, so but let's back up though, because now that we kind of went down that road a little bit, but tell me about growing up. I have to imagine you were a hell of an athlete. So what was football, wrestling? What'd you do growing up?
I played. I was huge into football and huge into baseball. Actually, when I was younger, my parents, when I was about 8 or 9, I was living in St. Louis. Actually, they sat me down and they expressed to me that they were getting a divorce, and I needed to pick who I was going to live with. I decided to live with my dad, and things got a little crazy there for a while. And my mother ended up putting me in foster care, and I lived in foster care for 4 or 5 years. Well, all throughout that, the only thing that was ever the same for me throughout all of that was wrestling. Like there was always a TV in these houses. And when you've got a life at the time that's in so much turmoil, you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're staying. My one constant was pro wrestling. So when I was finally able to get out of that scenario, I had family members that felt like they felt that I shouldn't be in that situation. I call him my dad today. His name's Earl. And you're talking about a man who had 9 children of his own, that was a truck driver, that lived on one paycheck for the whole family, and spent $40,000 of his own money to pay lawyers and go through all the legal fees to get me out of that situation.
Wow. So
as I got older, I fell into wrestling, and my dad really encouraged me. The one statement, like he always told me, he goes, "I've never done anything that I truly regretted." And what I took by that is there are times that he went out and he'd done things that he wanted to do and he failed. And that's part of life. But the fact of the matter is he tried them. He went out and he went against the norm and he tried them. So when it came time to wrestling, he was always telling me, he goes, "Just don't have any regrets. Don't have any regrets."
Yeah.
And that meant to me, don't give up, kid. Go get what you want. And he was a really big driving force in all of that for me.
Wow. So, I mean, in a maybe not a direct way, but he was telling basically follow your dream and don't.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And from the situation, I wasn't the easiest kid to deal with. You go from a happy family situation where you think, that your life is great, and you're watching on Saturday specials about families getting divorced, and then you wake up one morning and you're in that situation.
Yeah, you're that kid.
Yeah, and I became a really hateful person. I felt like the world owed me something. Oh, poor me. And then while I'm in the foster homes, my biological father passed away on Thanksgiving.
Oh, boy.
So that just created even more hatred and pain for me. And which wrestling was really able to help me direct that and channel that and control that.
How old were you then?
When I was going through all that.
When your father passed, and all that was going on.
I'd been in the foster homes maybe a year and a half, so I was 10.
Oh boy, yeah.
I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of anger built up, and why me situations, and but I was always told that, what, kid, if you want something, you've got to work for it. You've got to go after it. Don't give up. Don't don't let anybody tell you no. They can say it, just don't accept it. And it's been a really big driving force throughout my whole career. And it really helped me out when I met Harley and started going through wrestling training.
So was he your first, real, introduction to professional wrestling, and where you thought, hey, maybe I could do this? So where were you at that point in getting into professional wrestling?
Before I met Harley, I had gotten my biological brother was a big fan of wrestling. Uh-huh. Shawn used to watch you guys on Sunday mornings sitting in my underwear eating cereal. I'm a big fan of Shawn Mooney. I was kind of popped when we talked about doing this podcast. And I'd always had a love for it. My brother had met a guy at work and got on the independent scene. I had just I graduated high school. I went to Job Corps to become a certified welder. Mm-hmm. And I moved back to St. Louis, and my brother would invite me to watch his shows. Well, I've been 6'4" since I was about 14 years old. I don't know what it was. I grew up, I sprouted, and I stopped. Yeah. So they'd have me doing security. But before and after the shows, they'd have me taking all their bumps. I'd be their tackling dummy. Then I did that for maybe 3 months, and a wrestler didn't show up, and the promoter's looking around, and he's like, and he points at me, and he goes, "You've been training. You're going to wrestle tonight." Just like every other independent guy in the business. Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. And I did that for about 2 years, Shawn, and I was the shits. I could sell, and I could bump, but that was about it. And it was nothing against the guys that were around me. I just hadn't had that formal training, And I got to go do a show for Harley. He was starting a company called World Legion Wrestling, and a promoter had screwed me over 4 or 5 months before that. And hey, here, I'm gonna throw you a bone because I screwed you over. He got me a booking for Harley, and I got to work Greg the Hammer Valentine, the only name I'd ever worked up to that point.
Wow, yeah.
And we're at the Gorilla. And Valentine's talking to me, and he's like, "Yeah, kid, he was giving me heads up that I could have some offense if I'm gonna break kayfabe a little bit."
Yeah.
And Harley was right there, and he pulls off his headphones and he goes, "Valentine, the kid doesn't get shit." And Greg looks at me and goes, "Well, you heard the boss."
There you go.
And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm excited. I don't care. I don't care. All right." And Greg the Hammer Valentine proceeded to beat the snot out of me for 12 minutes. And I'm a young greenhorn coming back. It's the greatest fucking thing in the world. Oh, my God, it's awesome. I got my ass kicked for 12 minutes, but I was loving it.
By Greg Valentine.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And later on that evening, I was sitting, went up to Harley and just asked for some advice. And then he proceeded to tell me that he was opening up a school, and he was curious if I wanted to be one of his students. Huh. Well, yeah, of course,
Now, had you grown up, I imagine you had grown up watching Harley or seeing.
Oh, yeah. He was, I'm St. Louis area. Wrestling at the Chase was huge. And when you're watching wrestling, and for me, it was always about the tough guys. Don't get me wrong. I like the Rick Martells and the guys that were, flamboyant, and the Rick Rudes and stuff. But it was those guys that got me, like, you could legitimately tell, like, man, they're going to beat your ass.
Yeah, they're brawlers.
With the look. Yeah. And Harley always had this look on his face when you see him in the ring. It never changed. This I'm looking right through you kind of look. I'm about to eat your lunch. Yeah. And I always was, for some reason, I was always attracted to that character, that attitude. So when I had a chance to train get under the learning tree, not only that, but be one of his first. Yeah. I was all over it. Unbeknownst to me, I was going to be the guinea pig for his training school for the next 6 months to a year of what way we should train guys and how guys should be trained. And I mean, Shawn, for my first 3 months, I puked every single day in Harley school. Every day. Like, it was almost like he would come out and sit in his chair smoking a cigarette, and he knew it. Oh, it's going to happen in about 5 minutes. And he's sitting there smoking, and And he'd see me drop down, running out, and he just laughed, that low roar chuckle.
Yeah.
And I'd come running in, and inevitably I'd always forget the puke bucket. And what that meant was I had to fill it up with water and splash the puke in the street so no one else would really step in it. And he'd tell me, "Kid, you forgot the bucket." So I'd have to run back out, fill it up with water, splash it on the puke, and then run back inside and catch up on my calisthenics with everybody else. And I think that's one of the things that connected me and Harley so well, is that he knew that I was giving him every single thing I had every day, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to become great.
Yeah, that's I mean, to have Harley Race as a mentor, not just teaching you. I mean, how close did you get with him?
I mean, he held my children before my parents did. There were times that I've spent holidays with him. I've sat in his home while he sat in his tidy-whities drunk, laughing at people. And I know he'd probably kick my ass today if I told that story, but he was somebody I loved. I went into the situation wanting to earn his respect. I wanted to earn Harley Race's respect. 8-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race. And I came out with the love of a man that I will cherish for the rest of my life. My children call him Pappy. I love that man. If it wasn't for him, I would not have anything of what I have today. And when I was with the WWE, when I got let go, when my wife lost a child, he was always the first person that I called going, "What do I do? What do I do?" And he was always there to answer that phone call and give me that advice. I miss him dearly. I can't say enough good things about the person, not only the wrestler, but about the person. Wrestlers call him the toughest man on the toughest man on God's green earth when it comes to pro wrestling. But he was a teddy bear once I got past all that. And my kids love him, and I have pictures around my home of him. He will forever be embedded in my life.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about Harley that way, from that side that a lot of people never ever got to experience, because you had to earn it to be able to be in that circle. And I can't imagine it was a vast circle, but the people that were in there, I mean, I've heard them talk about him, and legit that he may have been the toughest individual ever outside of the ring. Nobody could if it came down to blows, he was just incredible. But that's what you
kind
hear
of
the
guy,
legend.
Shawn, walks? Yeah. Well, what kind of guy walks into a bar, a random bar, and wants to play pool, his quarters in front of everybody, and says, "I'm next."
Yeah.
Not knowing who's in the room, not caring who's in the room. That takes a lot of fortitude, testicular fortitude, if I'm using the PC verbiage here.
No, but the reason I bring that up is because that's kind of the legend that followed him. And man, and there was a part of him that you just knew if you were around him, that this menace about him that you knew, like you said, there are people that you just look at and like you do. I don't know anything about this man, but I would not mess with him. And he was that person, but a lot of people never knew that other side to him, that like you just talked about, that he was a teddy bear, and to him was all about respect, and he would do anything for somebody who had earned that.
Yes, sir. He would. Yeah. If you were his friend, you were his friend for life.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, that's incredible credentials, and you following with his teachings. That is a part of wrestling that we've lost in a sense that that the brawlers, we don't see as many anymore, and it's great that there's a stage now where they can really be seen again, and you're bringing that back, but with it comes the storytelling, which I think is one of the most important parts of being in that ring. And I think we've lost that. And I think that this has helped bringing it back. Do you feel, we look at this roster that's with the new NWA, and it's not real big, but every single one of those guys on the roster, they knew that, these guys are building a foundation here. And do you feel a real part of that?
Oh, totally. I look at the card and there's somebody brings something to every part of that card, with myself included.
Yeah.
It's an exciting moment for us as talent to be in this locker room. For the simple fact is, when you look around the locker room, everybody's got the same goal, that same intensity, that same drive to bring back pro wrestling that people understand and can go with. You and I, we've brought up storytelling quite a bit in this podcast, but every one of those individuals you see on the NWA program can go out there and tell a story, not just with one person, but with anybody.
Yeah. And
in my opinion, that's the true skill. Yeah, you've got this amazing talent right here, but can he wrestle to Ricky Starks, and then come back and wrestle a Tim Storm, and then go wrestle a Trevor Murdoch, and then wrestle a Kim Anderson, and still have those same great matches? Yeah. And you can say that about everybody that's on that NWA roster, and that's a testament to Billy and Dave stepping back and looking at the business and going, why aren't they being utilized? And then to say, well, if no one else is going to utilize them and see their value and see what they can do for the business, well, hell, we're just going to get them all. We're going to bring them together, and we're going to make our own company. And that's what they've done. And they were smart about who they picked first with Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
That man, as much as I want his title, which I do, and that's my goal.
Yeah.
But he's a fantastic representation of what we're trying to express in and out of the ring. He's classy. He's got respect. He can speak very well. But he's also got talent in the ring. When you step into the ring with that guy, you know what he can do, and he's the best of the best. So it seems like all these things have fallen into place quite perfectly, and the fans are the ones that really get the benefit of it all, Shawn.
Yeah, no, and I tell you, it's been really fun to watch, and it doesn't matter who they put you in the ring with; they're good matches, and I'm sure that comes from your lineage here with, and I'm going to connect you to, family basically with Harley Race, and it just shows in everything you do in the ring and how you present yourself and your promos, and I wanted to ask you though that I think one of the first championships, the titles that you won was in a match against Ming. Everybody remembers this coup, but my God, there's another guy that you hear about, talk about toughness, but that wasn't long after you'd gotten into this business. So how did that happen?
That was that just came down to hard work and hard work and hard work.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity. Harley at the time when we first started running World League Wrestling, there wasn't a lot of independents bringing in names. They couldn't afford them. Well, Harley, he could afford it, but plus he also knew all these guys personally. So Harley started bringing in these names not only to work with us to help us get better, but to help draw houses. So when Harley was bringing in Ming, I begged Harley, please, let me wrestle him. And Harley was like, kid, you don't know what you're asking for. And I said, I know exactly what I'm asking for. I said, I know it's not going to be, but I want this opportunity.
Yeah.
And it just, again, the stars seemed to align right. We had a big show here in Eldon, which was our home base. I was the local big baby face, and Harley had called me in the week before, and he sat me down, and he goes, kid, I'm going to give you what you want. And I had already forgotten about the conversation, and I go, well, what's that, Harley? He goes, you've got fucking Ming Saturday.
Wow.
All right. And, of course, Harley kayfabed me what was going to happen towards the finish all the way to the end. Like, I had no idea that was going to happen until I pinned Ming, and he didn't kick out.
Really?
Yeah, I had no idea. Harley was going to keep me in the dark. And after the conversation I'd had with Harley after that was, I said, Harley, was this your plan? And he said, it was my idea. And I said, well, how did that conversation go with Ming?
Yeah.
Because I just went over
in the
number
center
one,
of the
really
ring.
badass dude.
Yeah.
Like, this is the tough of tough guys. Number one. Number two, he wasn't too far off from the WCW run, and he wasn't too far from going back to his WWF run.
Yeah.
WWE run.
Yeah.
And he told me, he goes, I asked him if it was all right if he would do that for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I was like, what if he would have said no, Harley? You know, thinking Harley would be like, Ming, you do what the hell I say. I said, you know, Harley, what if he would have said no? He goes, well, you wouldn't have won. It's
Exactly.
that simple, kid.
Yeah, real simple.
And I was like, wow. Which also, not only, you know, I had a lot of respect for Ming before, but for him to do that for me, he didn't have to. You know what I mean? Like, he was a superstar.
He still would have put you over. Just being in the ring with him would have been a big boost.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have been happy, but for him to do that, so that really created a fondness for me with Ming. And Harley brought him in, you know, 9 or 10 times after that, and just sitting under his learning tree. That was the cool thing about wrestling for Harley, which a lot of guys didn't get, was Harley was always bringing in names for the shows. And those guys would come in a couple days early just to go out on the lake with Harley and party on Harley's boat. Yeah. And they do that at night, but then come work with us at the training school during the day. So I'm in the ring with guys like Ron and Don Harris, Disco Inferno, Ming, Billy Gunn. I mean, the list goes on and on. Before that was really a thing. Those guys were putting on seminars with us before it was really a thing.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. And, you know, you mentioned in Ming, and I've had other conversations with people, you know, he also, I mean, has the reputation for being, I guess it may have been, you know, 1 and 2, Harley and Ming, and you probably wouldn't be able to really decide who was 1, who was 2. But also, I mean, like how giving he could be, and what, you know, and how, you know, like butter in that ring with him, that he would just take care of people, and, you know, that he could have taken your head off anytime he wanted to.
Oh, bro, I'm 200 at the time. I'm 240 pounds, maybe 250 at the time. I was working out pretty hard for Harley, and Ming's slinging me around like I'm a wet noodle at 120 pounds. Like I'm nothing. Right. And that didn't happen back then. You know what I mean? So that there was nothing but respect. I had no choice but to respect. Not to mention, funny story, Harley had brought in Ming a couple months before that. And another wrestler was in the ring working with Ming. And you know as well as I do, in this business, when you're not the vet in the ring, you shut your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And this young man was trying to tell Ming what to do. And, of course, all of us guys are watching this match because it's Ming. And out of nowhere, Ming breaks character and yells, I mean, screams at the top of his lungs, shut the fuck up, and slaps the shit out of this kid. And we all are like, oh, no, that's not good.
Yeah, saw that coming.
Match gets in the finish. The match finishes, comes in the back. Ming's throwing chairs, yelling, Harley, what the fuck is this? You know, and right then and there, everybody's like, oh, no, I don't ever want to make him mad. Yeah. Never. And then 2 months later, I'm in the ring with the guy, and I'm like, oh, shit, I better be careful. But he was a true gentleman, true professional, treated me with respect, made me look like $1 million. He is a prime example of a guy who's not the character you see on TV. He plays a really good character, but he is not that character. Yeah.
But again, I mean, it was all about respect. You step out of line, and he is somebody who can certainly straighten you out in a hurry. I'm sure that guy got out of that building real fast.
In a heartbeat.
That day. Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've had a really interesting road that you've traveled, even working with Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW, coming from where you were, you know, taught, where you did your schooling, and then going into a situation like that. What was that experience like, because they prided themselves in stepping outside of the norm and going to the extreme. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, Shawn, I'm going to have to tell you, bud, that's one of the biggest misconceptions of my career. I don't know who's done that, but I've never wrestled for ECW. And believe it or not, you're not the first interviewer that's asked me that question.
Well, they say, stand up. Where did stand up come from?
Stand up was an ECW character.
Yeah.
Stand up wasn't the Dups were an ECW character. And when they got brought to TNA, they brought the Dups, but they didn't bring all of them. Uh-huh. And at the time, Ron Harris was real tight with Jeff Jarrett and was help creating TNA. Again, that goes back to me being thankful for Harley. Harley had the wherewithal to think, wow, Jeff Jarrett's going to be starting a nationally televised wrestling program. Why don't I bring him in for one of my shows and have him work some of my guys and see what he thinks? And sure enough, Harley put me in a singles match with Jeff Jarrett in St. Louis, Missouri at the Shrine Moss. And had a great match with Jeff. I had a really good relationship with Ron Harris. And about 3 weeks later, Ron calls me and says, hey, he goes, we're going to bring you in. We're bringing these characters from ECW called the Dups. And we're going to bring you in and we're going to tag you with this guy named Murray. Yeah. And you guys are going to be the Dups. He's going to be Bo Dup. You're going to be Stand Up. And that's maybe where the ECW connection is.
Yeah, well, you
but
see
I've
how this
never
travels. It's like telephone.
Yes, telephone.
Because really, I was never. I don't know the history of ECW at all. I'm so I apologize for not.
No. That's where I think that's where the connection is. And for me, I had to go back. I hadn't even watched the Dups, so I literally when Ron calls me and I'm yes sir, any opportunity, yes sir. When I got done, I'm like, well, holy shit, I don't know nothing about these guys.
Right.
I had to go back and do research. I called Murray, had him send me some tapes so I could find out what I was doing and then integrate myself into that character and be that person.
Yeah. So the way this all came about was through TNA and them bringing over.
Yes, I was their first. I was a part of I don't know if you remember, TNA used to be nothing but pay-per-views, a weekly pay-per-view. You had to pay like $10. I think the deal was WWE charges you $40 to $50 for one pay-per-view. Why not pay $40 a month and get 4 pay-per-views, one a week?
One a week, yeah.
And I was on their first 9 set of TV tapings until I went to Japan, and then they never called me back. But that's another story.
All right, so but take me back though, and let's correct the record here, and tell me how the path to TNA happened.
Ron and Don, it was just like that. Actually, it really happened where I had a connection with Ron and Don. Harley brought in Jeff to have the match. I had a great singles match with Jeff Jarrett, and that it really trickled down just like that. All right, here's a kid that we think can work. I actually got to wrestle the Boss, and I got a call like 3 or 4 weeks later saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to bring you in to stand up. This is what we're going to do, and here's our start date." And they told me what they were going to pay me, which wasn't much, which that wasn't anything against them. I was a no-name guy coming in for an opportunity. And I sent them pictures the next week of my gear, what I thought would be stand up. And literally I was in my car driving to Nashville 2 weeks later, having my first pay-per-view televised television match. And I did that for about 8 or 9 weeks. And it was literally a week-by-week call. Like I'd get done, drive home from Nashville. I'd get a call on Tuesday. Okay, we're going to use you for this week. And I'd gotten, Harley was trying to get me in Japan at the time, and I'd gotten a deal with Noah to come in for my first 3-week tour. So I told TNA, listen, guys, I got booked in Japan. I'm going to be gone this week, and this week. And they were like, thank you. We appreciate you giving us a heads up. It gives us an opportunity to write you out of the story and then write you back in. And at the time, Russo was working the back there, and he was the lead creative, the head writer. And I was in contact with him the whole time. Even called him up to the point a week before I was coming back. Hey, listen, just to remind you, I'm coming back in a week. As soon as I got home, they never picked up my phone calls after that. I don't know what the deal was. Like, I never even on the back end, you know how it is, Shawn, you hear later on down the road, well, this is what I heard while you weren't doing this, whatever. I never even heard. They just stopped contacting me. And of course, as a young guy, you're like, oh shit, my world's over. I've somehow ruined my only TV opportunity. My career's going to shit.
Yeah.
And, lo and behold, as you get older and you look back, you go, no, it wasn't me. It was the company.
Yeah. Business.
So
yeah,
it is what it is, man. And then I just, from there on, I started wrestling. I just stayed focused wrestling for Harley, trying to get opportunities. I had wrestled for WWE. Harley would get us tryouts every time they were in town, and I had wrestled for them 8 or 9 different times, doing dark matches. I was doing security. Like, I don't know if you remember the one time when Bischoff was there and Kane was being brought out in an ambulance.
Yeah.
I was one of the security guards that undid his shackles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And nobody had paid me not a lick of attention. I always got the good job, kid, but never got a phone call.
Right.
And that just kind of proved to me, like, well, maybe this is not the place for me. Like, maybe this isn't where I'm destined to be at. So I had really focused my career on Japan. And Harley called me up one day and he goes, hey, you've got an opportunity to go back to Japan. They'd like you to go through the dojo. And I was like, man, that's a lot, Harley. Like, the dojo's no joke in Japan.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he goes, well, kid, it's, the decision's up to you. And I said, let's do it, And I went over there, and that began my journey of doing 500 squats a day, 300 push-ups a day, 3 to 4 minute neck bridges, 100 to 150 bumps a day.
Still needed the bucket
over there. Oh yeah, every day. You can't, especially you're pushing yourself.
Yeah.
And the Japanese found that, they found it gross, but they also knew that I was pushing myself to my limits,
every day.
And I got done with my first 3 months, and they said, hey, do you want to come back? And there had been other wrestlers that had been invited to come over, but after their first 3 months, they wanted to go home. Like, they didn't want to stay there. And I wanted to be different, number one. Number two, I was representing Harley. So I wanted them to know that, his guys are just as tough as he is. And so I said, yeah, I'll come back for 3 months and another 3 months. So I had to come home for 3 weeks to do my visa paperwork and stuff.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend, who's now my beautiful wife, she got the shitty end of the deal, because I came home and she was so happy. I'd been gone for 3 months, and I kept my mouth shut about it for a week because I didn't want to ruin.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ruin that for her. And after that first week, I said, hey, I got to talk to you. And I said, in 2 weeks, I'm leaving for another 3 months. Yeah. And all credit goes to her. She stuck by my side, and she was my ride and die, and then dealt with the bills and the house and the kids and everything. And I came back, and, she's my wife. She's my queen. But when I came back from there, my whole goal was, all right, I just spent 6 months in the dojo in Japan, getting acquainted with every wrestler, getting beat up by every wrestler over there, letting them know this is what I want. And I'm home for maybe 2 weeks, and Harley goes, I got you a tryout with WWE. Huh. I said, all right, right on. I was, okay, cool, and it was one of those deals where, you go up there, they might use you, they might not use you, but they still paid you $250 to show up, and you got badass catering. So I was like, shoot,
get a good meal out of
catering? Yeah, hell yeah.
Before we talk about the WWE, though, because you kind of glossed by this, but people don't really understand what it's like to work in Japan. It is an entirely different world, and I would say, would you when I say that stiff is an understatement? What?
Oh, it's a complete understatement.
Yeah.
Wrestling is still in the newspapers over there as legitimate sport, because it is a legitimate, like, it's as legitimate as it's going to get, you know. And with being a young guy over there, those guys they test you. And what I mean by test you is they will beat the shit out of you until you fight back.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. They want a guy who's willing to fight back. And a lot of Americans don't understand that when they go over there and these guys are beating the snot out of them. And they're like, what'd I do wrong?
Yeah, what the hell?
Well, you didn't do nothing wrong except not fight back, you pussy.
Yeah.
It's a very, you know, kayfabe is number one over there. Heel locker room, babyface locker room. There is no going out and hanging out with your opponents. It's legit, you know. And not to mention, being a young boy, I had to get up every morning, clean. Even if we weren't doing shows, okay, I'd have to get up in the morning. I'd have to be at the dojo before everybody else, clean the dojo for an hour. Then you go through 4 or 5 hours of training. Then when you're done, the wrestlers, like the legit wrestlers, they stay and work out with weights in the gym. Well, you go back to the apartment and you start to make lunch for everybody. You make chunko, basically. Yeah. So you're sweated your ass off. You clean their dojo. You're half dead because they've just run you plumb to the ground, squats, bumps, and everything. Then you got to cook lunch for everybody. And I didn't do this completely by myself. There were other young boys to do it too. Yeah. But that was my life for 6 months. Jeez. And then if we were on the road, I had to get up. If we went to another town, I'd have to get up before everybody because each wrestler had different drinks that they would drink at the shows. So you would have to go to the convenience store and buy these drinks, not out of your money, out of company money, but have these drinks in the coolers at the shows and make sure each locker room had newspaper over the windows. Each locker room had their drinks. Each locker room had towels. And then you went back out to the ring and you did your 500 squats, your 300 push-ups, your 100, 150 bumps. Then you went back and you had your match.
Right. Then you had to
wrestle.
And whether or not you went over or not, you got the crap beat out of you, no matter, you know, what happened.
Because you're the young boy, and you take the heat. You take everything. You take the pin. You're it. And then at the end of the match, you've got to go back to the back, change your clothes as quickly as possible, and run out to the ring. Because as a young boy, you're required to be by the ring and watch the rest of the matches so you can get better. And then when you're done there, you got to clean up all the locker room's mess, get everything back on the bus, and head to the next town. And that's, you know, and that was my life for 6 months.
Well, you talk about paying your dues, but what did that do for you as a professional wrestler, especially when you came back to the States?
It certainly gave me a certain amount of respect for everybody when it comes to the business and for the older generation of the guys, what they had to go through in the Japanese culture. But it also kind of humbled me a little bit when I seen a guy going through some tough times. You know, I encouraged him. You know what I mean? That definitely knocked the cockiness out of me and made me a humble. I mean, I was respectful before, but I came back. I was extremely respectful. It also gave me a certain amount of confidence too, Shawn. Like, I don't look chiseled, but you can't blow me up, and you sure as hell can't beat my ass, because there ain't nothing you could do to me worse than what those guys just did to me. And so when I got to the WWE, I had to deal with that. Like, I didn't look like $1 million. Yeah. And I was getting put on the main roster TV in front of guys who'd been in developmental working their ass off, who looked like $1 million. And they just got brought up, and they're like, wait a minute, who's this guy who just come off the independents, wrestling a show for Harley on Friday, and then you're on Monday Night Raw that Monday. Who the hell are you? Yeah. And those guys would try to run me through the paces. I mean, just try to blow me up, and they couldn't do it, and it pissed them off.
They're like, what?
Until they finally realized, okay, wait a minute, now we know why he's here. Yeah. The guy can work. The guy's tough as nails. The guy, you can't blow him up. And I'm all about the match, Shawn. It don't matter how good I look. If the match is shit, when people walk out of the arena, they're going to say that match was shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good I look. Guys don't understand that nowadays.
Yeah. Now, have you enjoyed that though throughout your career? That surprising people that they have this one view of you when they first step into a ring or even see you, and then by the time they step out of that ring, they've got a bit of respect for sure.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
No, it's got its good and bads.
Yeah.
Sean, it hasn't, at times, me sticking to my morals and what I think a wrestler should be and what I should do in the ring hasn't always been the best career choice for me. There are times that I could have done things that I would have made great money at, but I just wasn't willing to sacrifice who I was as a person.
Uh-huh.
Whereas, and that, going through all of that stuff and people looking at me with, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, it's given me a leverage of, all right, this guy's the real deal. That's the one thing I'm thankful for with NWA. Like, I keep hearing that. This guy's the real deal. Like, he's the old school. Like, he's the real. There's a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
For me. Also, it's a lot of pride if Harley was here. You know what I mean? Because he didn't train just a guy that could do some spots. I feel as if people are starting to respect me for what I've done and where I've been and what I'm willing to do to entertain them.
Yeah. So what was that first experience like, though, with the WWE? Because, that had to be a major goal at the time for you. And
I was completely fish out of water. For the simple fact is that a lot of those guys go through developmental and they see how the WWE
right. It's like being in the minor leagues.
Works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're able to at least get a view of how to react, how to behave, who to talk to. I didn't have any of that.
Right.
So I had to rely a lot on my tag partner, Lance, who we need to talk to, who not to talk to, how to behave, when, if you want to act a fool, where to do it. I was heavily relying on him for like that first year.
Uh-huh.
But after that, you start, and you know how the machine works, Sean. After you're around it a while, all right, talking to that guy, it's a waste of time, and that's where like we started getting more of a push. If you look throughout the career towards the middle when I was there, because I finally got tired of talking to writers that weren't getting anything, writers who weren't speaking up for me, people who wasn't speaking. We went to Vince. I'm like, if I'm going to have anybody tell me no, it's going to be Vince.
Right.
At least I can respect that answer. And there were 4 or 5 times that we weren't being put on TV and we didn't know why. And we went to Vince. Like one time, we were off TV for 4 or 5 weeks, and we were writing ideas for us and giving them to the writers, the people who should be writing the ideas, the people who are getting paid to write ideas.
Right.
But we were doing it for ourselves, and they weren't getting anywhere. So we tracked down Vince. We saw him in catering the one time he was by himself, and we sat right next to him. And we said, Vince, you're not putting us on TV. We want to know why. And he looked at Lance. He goes, I hate your fake black hair. And he looked at me, and he goes, I hate your pasty white skin. We said, okay. We got up. The next day, I was tan. My partner was blonde. I'll be damned if we weren't on TV that next week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, why couldn't have this happened 3 or 4 weeks ago?
Saved a lot of time.
It saved us, everybody, time, money. And Sean, that was like the beginning of my disdain with the business.
Yeah.
Like, I've worked my whole career. I've trained by one of the toughest guys in the business. I just went through 6 months of hell.
Yeah.
And my career is halted because somebody couldn't send an email or make a phone call or just give me a heads up. That's where my career was. And it really bothered me. Like, wow, all that hard work and one lazy asshole putting a hold on it. Because to me, that's all it was, laziness. You're paying me. You're putting me on your TV. You're telling me you ain't got enough time and energy to give me a 2-minute phone call to tell me to change something so it works better for you. And it really started leading me down my path of maybe this business isn't made for me. Maybe I was born in the wrong time frame. Maybe I'm the round peg in the square hole.
Yeah.
And it slowly started just making me have disdain for the pro wrestling business.
Yeah. But I've heard that, time and time again, that it wasn't, proving yourself out in the ring wasn't the problem for people that had been through there. And had worked their ass off to get there, and it's back behind that curtain, and people not knowing how you find your way through all this. There's of course a ton of politics going on back there because everybody wants their time in front of those cameras, but nobody knows, what's the protocol here. You got people that that say that you just go to Vince and tell him. Well, no, you can't do that because then then you're screwed. Or you try to go through writers, or there's other guys that you think got your back and they don't, and that's the toughest part. And there's people. The list is endless of very, very talented athletes that went through that the WWE. They have the look. They've got great in the ring. They can cut a promo, but they couldn't get a push, and that is, and there's no right way. I don't think to this day. I'm sure it still exists, and you hear the frustration of some of these guys that are there, but there isn't. Like you just said, there's no what you wasted. How long? And it took sitting down at a table, finally being able to get to the boss. And if you just would have had a fake tan, it would have like what?
Yeah,
after all
very
that.
Stupid,
Yeah.
Very minute. It could have been totally avoided. And I was hit with situations like that periodically throughout my time there. And they, to a certain extent, it takes the boys and they start pitting the boys against each other. And that's not good for business at all. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being competitive.
Right.
Being competitive is good for a business.
There's a difference.
But there's a complete difference, Shawn. Yeah. And that wasn't, from what I seen with my time there, that wasn't their goal. Their goal, I don't really know what their goal was. I still can't figure it out because none of it made sense to me. It truly didn't make sense to me. Because for us, we were going out killing it on the house shows. Killing it on the house shows. Getting crazy reactions. And then we'd come to TV on Monday expecting a decent push, or at least to be focused on TV, because we know Vince is getting all the agent reports from the house shows.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly from what I was told, that's how you got over on TV. You had amazing house show reports. You did great at house shows, which translated to TV.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. At least when I was there, that's not how it was working.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, man, that formula worked before. Why try to change it? And that reverts me back to the NWA, man. Like it's the wheel, bro. It's not broken. Why try to fix it? They're letting guys go out there and tell stories that people can understand and they can get excited about, and people can follow. That's the other thing, Shawn.
Yeah. People
can follow what we're doing on the NWA, and it doesn't get lost in a SmackDown or an NXT or 1,000 Facebook messages. It's focused on one thing, and you can follow it, get excited about it, and understand it. And that's why I think people are getting so excited about the NWA, because they can understand it.
Now, when you first went in there, and of course you mentioned about Billy and Dave and how they kind of presented this, but you won't know until you get there at that point. And what was it that first really caught your attention that this could work? That it was something that because you see young and old now. It's not. It's of course you're going to get that crowd that loves that old school, who watched it when it was in the studios, and then the NWA and AWA and all these other organizations, the territories. But then you what I see is that you've also got some young people that are getting into it. So what did you first really notice that made you say, you know what, there's something to this?
That first night, it was actually in two different phases, because I can tell you exactly when it hit me. Yeah. It was after that first night and after that first TV taping aired. Yeah. The first night, you got a crowd in there, and we taped 4 episodes one day, 5 episodes the next day. So you're sitting here thinking, wow, these folks have got to sit through 4 hours of pro wrestling. And
yeah, more than that when you talk about resetting and,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't include you're totally right. Yeah. There's way more time. These people have got to sit there, and we've got to keep them up. And Shawn, by the end of that TV taping, those people were just as loud as they were when they started the night. And I was like, wow, that says something, because most independents can't go out and put on a 5-match show in 3 hours and keep the crowd going. It's difficult for a lot of people, but we had them hyped up all the way to the end. And then when you watch the numbers and the comments and the reactions, people weren't focusing on people's the way they looked. Yeah. They weren't focusing on if somebody messed up, or if they weren't focusing on the negative. People were just like, wow, this is refreshing. Yeah. Wow, that promo felt real. Wow, that guy knocked the piss out of it. They were focusing on the positive shit. Yeah. Whereas you can't say that about other organizations. It seems as if nowadays we live in a world where it's much easier to point out the negative than it is the positive. And if you're looking back at all those comments for those NWA programs, 99% of them are positive. People are just like, wow, this is great. I want more. Wow, Murdoch hammered that guy with the spine buster. Yeah. The girls, wow, Thunder Rose is so great. It's all positive shit. Yeah, you're going to get your buttholes in there. Yeah. The guys that are just, their world is just doesn't trolls, get any better unless they make talk shit. Yeah. Which you brush by those guys. 99% of the people though are just talking about positive shit, and it's not about one dude. That's the other thing. Like in those other larger companies that focus on one or two people, you've got a variety of fans that love different parts of the show. That was one of the reasons why I fell in love with wrestling, because there were times that I would watch WWF or NWA or World Class, and I'd watch the match and I'd be like, this stinks. Yeah. But so-and-so's coming next. Right. There was something for everybody. There was a variety for everybody. So if you didn't like one thing, you had something else. You can't say that about today's TV program nowadays, because everybody seems so similar. Yeah. Whereas if you watched an NWA product, you get a variety. You get girls, you get guys, you get big guys, you get little guys, you get fat guys, you get jack guys. You get a variety. There's something for everybody to latch on to. And I think that's the magic that NWA is creating. Yeah, and they you're right. You hit on it right there. With the characters are so unique. I mean, you've got from Aaron Stevens to Ricky Starks is a completely, Trevor Murdoch. Everybody. Nick has got that. The national treasure and the acts. The English. I told him that he reminds me of the Kingsman. He could be like a character from the Kingsman. Dude, that's a badass flick. I'm so glad you brought that up. A badass flick. He'd be perfect. I said you could be. I could see you in one of those movies. I don't know if that's something he's part of his plan down the road there, but it's true though, and that's what exactly right. And that's why I said when they selected this roster, they wanted to make sure that that's what they had, and every one of them had to not only be able to work, but they had to be great in front of that camera. You don't get many shots, when you're starting out something new like that, and they're nailing it. So it's really well, especially in a program that's very lightly edited. Yeah. You know how it is, man. Money's important. Yeah. Production time is important. So a lot of these matches are literally they're being taped in order the way they would air. Yeah. So you're getting one shot. You know what I mean? And if you're not able to step up to the plate and knock a home run out, you may not come back. And that's the one cool thing. It's a cool thing, but it's a bad thing about Dave and Billy, is that they're the company. The only way, one of the main reasons the company is going to survive is if the company goes along with what the people are wanting. And what I mean by that is, if the fans are getting fired up behind a Ricky Starks, there's no political bullshit in the back, man. They're getting behind Ricky, we're going with Ricky. Push them. Yeah. Getting behind Eli, we're going with Eli. They're getting behind Ken, we're going behind Ken. They're getting behind Nick Aldis, we're going with Nick Aldis. Yeah. And it's the place that a worker wants to come, because if you're going out and you're producing, putting good matches out, you've got the people behind you in whatever form you need, heel or babyface, and you're doing your job, you're going to get rewarded. You're going to start getting more. You're going to start being put in more high-pressure situations. That's how the wrestling business should be, and at one time was like that.
Yeah.
That's why we're still having to bring in, we call them that old, the old school guys. But that's why those guys can still come in and be on TV and haven't been seen in a year and get the biggest reaction of the night. Because back then they built stars. Everybody was a star.
Yeah. And at that time, stars. Yeah, but at that time too is I've often told people that I don't think there's a business that's more of an equal opportunity industry than professional wrestling. At least it was during that period of time, because it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter what walk of life you came from. It had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with gender. It all that mattered was, can you sell tickets? If you sell tickets, yes, I am going to put you out there. And that's the way it should be.
That's how, and it works, and everybody's happy. You know what I mean? And the guys that aren't able to make it to that level, they have something to work for. Whereas guys that are already at that level and they're not getting that chance, they go, oh, why do I need to continue doing what I'm doing? I'm not going to get where I need to be. Yeah. And NWA gives you that opportunity. That's where I go back to the whole dress down thing. Yeah. You can't hide in front of the smoke. You can't hide in front of the lights. You can't hide in front of the music. Yeah. You can't hide in front of a catchphrase. You got to go out there and you got to prove to the people every single night, right there in front of you, that you deserve to be in that ring. And I'm extremely thankful that Billy and Dave Lagana give me that platform to do that.
Yeah. What is you mentioned the experience of like you shot I think 5 one day, 4 the next, or what is it like to to do that have that kind of a production schedule?
Oh man, it's insane because when you're wrestling, I got lucky enough to do to see the TNA Impact TV tapings. I've been with the WWE and their production schedule, and they take an all day process to get one show together. Yeah. Whereas all of us have to run around and go, okay, we've got show 1 and we still got 3 more shows to go. It's a pressure cooker, but it's an exciting one. It makes you, for me, it gets me jacked up. I get fired up. I'm the guy that's like in the back of the locker room. Come on, guys, we got this. Woo, 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 woo. It makes me feel good because I know that everybody in the locker room can handle it. It's just a lot of people haven't had that opportunity to prove it yet. And those first 9 tapings are proof in the proofs in the pudding. Guys went out there and they busted their ass and gave everything they got, and they came in the back and they're like, all right, I got another match in an hour and a half. All right, this is what I got to do. And they went out there and they performed as if they were fresh as a daisy. For me, it's exciting. It makes me feel like I've earned my money. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me. It keeps things fired up back there in the locker room. Now, what that means though is at the end of that day, which is usually a 14-hour day from the time you walked into the building to the time you leave, everybody is drained. Like when the bell rings on the last match, you can look back in the locker room and everybody's just like, oh shit, okay, good, we're done. But they're excited because tomorrow we get to do it all over again, and they're not mad, they're not whining, they're not complaining. They're ready to get some sleep, get charged up, and go do it again. And the fact that the fans are coming along with every bit of it, they're there for it. I can't imagine what these next set of TV tapings and this pay-per-view is going to be like. I can just feel the energy. Just thinking about it, I just feel the energy. It's going to be amazing. Yeah,
it must be tough to go through that experience because you do all these shows and then you got to wait until the next one. Because you're like,
well, you got to get hot, you get cold, you get hot, you get cold.
But then in between TV tapings too, and then now they're going to have with these pay-per-views. But you got these gaps in between. It must be you must be so anxious to get back in case here see what happens next.
Well, yeah, that's because I don't know. We don't know what's gonna happen until we get there. So it's number one, it keeps kayfabe because Stooge Patrol. So you don't want to you don't break kayfabe.
Social media,
but it also you come in and you're like, okay, it's a fresh reaction. It's an honest reaction. It's okay. This is what we're going to do. I like it. I like the pressure. I like being put in situations where they're not sure how it's going to turn out. And in my head, I'm going, don't you worry, I got this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my match with a question mark, I'm sure a lot of people they're not sure how that's going to turn out, which I'm 100% okay with.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find out just like I will at the end of 1, 2, 3.
That's awesome. Well, Trevor, it may have taken you a while to find the right stage, but I think you found it. And I tell you, it's just really exciting to see what's happening with the NWA and Power, and there's so much more ahead. So I hope you feel the same way. I hope that you feel that I don't know how this was a long road, but man, it seems like you're having more fun than you ever have.
No, I definitely feel like I am in the right place. If the shoe fits, I'm in it, brother.
Yeah.
The one positive thing about all of this is that Dave and Billy don't micromanage us.
Yeah.
I've never been with a televised company that said, Trevor, go out and do what you do.
Yeah.
And at first, when they said that to me, I was a little shocked. Like I froze a little bit because I was like, I'm not sure what.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, all right, okay. I can do this.
Yeah.
Because there's always been somebody there, Shawn, to tell me, this direction, that direction. We don't do this, do this.
Yeah.
And that's not how I was brought up, but I got into that mode. So when they said, just do you, like, are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
This is okay.
Go out and have great matches.
Yeah, and after that first match, coming back, Billy gave me a hug and said, that's what I want every time.
Yeah,
okay.
That's awesome. Hey, how can folks follow you? Because I'm sure you're going to get a few more.
Yes, sir. I'm on Twitter at @RealTMurdoch. Same thing with Instagram. Same thing on Facebook. I'm the only fat redneck on there that's willing to be me. So, I'm not a hard guy to find, especially now that I've started to immerse myself more back into pro wrestling, get myself back out there again.
Yeah.
Hell, I had a lot of people thought I was dead, Shawn.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, believe me, they thought I was too. So.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if this is going to make the podcast, but I popped when you contacted me because I'm still, Shawn, I'm a wrestling fan at heart.
Yeah.
So for you to contact me and ask me to be on your podcast, I popped a little bit. I'm a little bit of a mark, man. You're a part of my childhood, so I appreciate you calling me and letting me be a part of this.
Well, dude, believe me, I just respect what you do on the ring so much, and really, it's some of the best matches. I mean, that they've seen in the new NWA, and I go back and before I have these interviews and watch some of the older matches and like the stuff you did with Goldust, and I mean, just great stuff. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I will continue to follow you. And of course, what's happening with the new NWA on Power. So folks, remember you can catch it every Tuesday when they drop a new episode, and they've got more new episodes out there soon. So be sure and tune in. Trevor Murdoch, thank you so much for being on Primetime.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you for having me.
Folks, I had never met Trevor before we had our conversation, and we actually recorded that episode before I went to Atlanta for the NWA Power TV tapings. But I have to tell you, after when we met in person, it was like I'd known him forever. I mean, really, just a great guy, very personable, and one of the best hands in the ring, in the business, absolutely. I tell you, when I started watching the Power episodes initially, I was so impressed by him. I mean, he just grabbed my attention right away by what he was doing in the ring, and also he just cut some great promos, just one of the best. And I can also tell you, after meeting him, that he is having the absolute time of his life in the NWA. I am so happy that he decided to put his boots back on. I'm not sure how we're going to move forward with having more stars from the NWA on. I know we will. But with my new alliance with the National Wrestling Alliance, I will be able to bring you a lot more behind the scenes and the very latest on what's happening in the NWA. Like I said, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you would like to see happen, just, to just bring NWA personalities on PTSM, or would you like us to launch a completely separate podcast totally devoted to what is happening in the NWA? So once again, email me at primetimemooney@gmail.com and let me know, okay? If you liked what you heard today and you listen to the podcast through iTunes, please subscribe and then also give us a 5-star rating and review, okay? Because that helps out a lot. So if you're downloading through iTunes, please do that. Subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and a review. All right, what else? There is a new T-shirt out. Yes, very excited about this. It says, "Guess Who's Back?" I love this one, and some great colors in it. You'll recognize the colors in it because it is NWA related. I'll say related. So check that out. And the rest of our fabulous PTSM tee collection by going to mooneytees.com. See how simple we make it for you? Just go to mooneytees.com and check out all of our great collection. All right, all business taken care of. Catch the latest Vault episode coming up this Saturday. We drop a Vault episode, maybe one from the library you haven't had a chance to listen to, and this is a great way for you to catch up. Of course, on Monday, another great network classic that we do with one of the great shows from the past in the WWE. We do that every Monday, and of course, another original episode of PTSM on Wednesdays, unless, of course, we have on another NWA personality. In that case, we will drop it early on Tuesday nights at 7:05 p.m. There you have it. Until next time, I'm Shawn Mooney, and I am out.